Welcome back to Beverly Hills. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about agents. I talked in a previous video about why you might want to consider working with an agent. Today I want to talk about why you might not want to work with an agent. So across my career, I've had 5 different agents. At one point I had 3. I had one for movies, I had one for advertising, and I had one for publishing. So one by one, I kind of stopped working with all of them. And for the most part, what was going on was I wanted to be in control of the jobs I was working on and the jobs that I wasn't. Even though I hate haggling prices and dealing with money and contracts and everything, I wanted to know what was going on, and a lot of it was being done for me, and I was just kind of being shooed into certain jobs. And I just wanted to know what else is out there. What do I really have to choose from? Because you have to realize your agent isn't just representing you. They usually have a number of clients, and they may have a lot. And the more that they have, the more you're just a number and you're just another person that they're kind of passing stuff off to. So I'll give you 2 examples where things kind of went sour, where I stopped working with an agent. So one, I had an agent for publishing. And this was really interesting because when I signed with her, her name was Rose, well-respected agent in the business of publishing. But I already was working on a lot of Star Wars books. And I think that's how she found me, was because at the time, one of the books I had illustrated had just become a New York Times bestseller. So she contacted me and she said, I want to fight for you. I want to get you some really cool gigs. I was all about it. So the one thing I wanted to make sure, and every agent has kind of a different thing going on, but the one thing that I wanted to make sure was that she wasn't going to dip into any books that I was already getting myself. She was totally fine with that. So for the first month, she was kind of contacting me, hey, I got this new Star Wars book, do you want to work on it? It was interesting because I had to tell her I'm already working on that book, and she was like, darn it, because I already had a relationship with Lucasfilm and a lot of the licensees. So I remember she called me one day and she said, listen, obviously you've got the Star Wars thing down. What can I hook you up with? What do you really want to work on? And I remember it was the year 2000, and it was really interesting because there was a new trilogy of movies that was coming out called Lord of the Rings. It was also interesting, the following year was also when the new Harry Potter movies were coming out. I didn't know anything about Harry Potter, though, other than there were books and they were making movies. So my agent asked, what do you want to work on? I said, you know what? I would love to work on anything Lord of the Rings. I remember I tried reading the books with my dad when I was a kid. That went way over my head. We're always on this eternal thing where we want to impress our family, we want to impress our mom and dad. So my dad thought it was cool that I worked on Star Wars, but I knew my dad would really be impressed if I worked on something Lord of the Rings. So I said, anything Lord of the Rings, if you can hook me up, I am in, I would love to do it. She said, you got it, I am gonna fight for you. So about a month went by, she called me one day, she said, hey, I've got great news for you. Are you sitting down? I said, hold on, let me sit down. I said, okay, I'm ready, lay it on me. What do you got? She said, check it out. You are the new writer and artist of the book How to Draw Harry Potter. And I said, Harry Potter? She goes, well, you don't sound very excited. And I said, well, Harry Potter, I don't know anything about Harry Potter. She goes, you love Harry Potter. I said, no. I said, we had a conversation about a month ago that I was really into Lord of the Rings. And she goes, that's not the same thing? No, wah, it is not the same thing, right? So the thing was, she fought so hard to get me this gig, and so I took a day to think about it, and I hadn't read the books. Now you have to keep in mind, the movies hadn't come out yet, so you didn't know, other than the really cool book covers, you didn't really know what everything looked like. So I said, give me a day to think about it. So I went to Barnes & Noble, I started flipping through the books, and I was like, man, what's a Dumbledore, and who's a Slytherin? I don't know any of this stuff, right? So it was very difficult for me. To me, it just seemed like a lot of work. I was going to have to read these books. Oh my gosh. So I called her the next day and I said, I am so sorry. I can't work on this. And she worked so hard to get me this gig, but I just felt like someone out there would just love to write and illustrate how to draw Harry Potter, so I want to leave it for them, let them work on it, right? So we had kind of a falling out after she did all that work to try to get me this gig. So that was one example of how I stopped working with an agent, right? I'll give you one more example that was kind of interesting. So that was kind of on her, because she should know in the world of publishing the difference between Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter, am I right? So I'll give you another example that was maybe a little bit more my fault. So one of the agencies I started working with for movies, a place called Famous Frames, did a lot of work for them for years. And when I started with them, again, I had already been doing a lot of Star Wars work with Lucasfilm. And when I started with them, they said, oh, this is great, this is awesome. We get Star Wars stuff from time to time, so anytime we get something Star Wars, we're gonna come right to you. You're our Star Wars person. And I really felt like, yeah, I'm the Star Wars guy, absolutely, right? Well, they did get me some cool Star Wars gigs, and I had done some Star Wars toy work for Mattel when Mattel was trying to get the license. I did some work for Disneyland. It was actually a company called Team Disney, which designs their theme park rides, and I worked on a ride, a Star Wars ride, not Star Tours, another ride they ended up not making, but I got to help work on designs for it, which was really cool. So there were a number of cool Star Wars things. Well, I'll never forget, one day after working for them for years, I remember that I went in their offices and they had a bunch of storyboards for, it was the Star Wars special editions, and it was all the new scenes that they added. And they had copies of the storyboards pinned on the wall. And I was like, oh my gosh, these are so cool. Like, who did these? And they said, oh, we got this new kid, that's, we had him do, he does great work, right? And I was like, well, yeah, it's cool, but I thought I was your Star Wars guy. And they were like, oh, you are. We just, we thought we would give this little kid a shot and give him the stuff. And I was like, I thought I was your Star Wars guy? Apparently not. So you know what? See ya. And I walked, and in retrospect, my feelings were hurt because I thought I was their Star Wars guy. That was a pretty dumb reason to leave, because they did get me really cool gigs, and oh my gosh, it was really, really good money. But it was frustrating because I thought I was this thing and I really wasn't. And you have to understand, you are not the only artist that they are representing. How do you know that they are contacting you with the best jobs? You want to see all the jobs they hit. Well, you don't get to see. They just call you when they have something, and you can take it or you can leave it, right? So I was a little bit frustrated with that. And so over time, for me, it just worked better for me not to work with any agents. But I have to tell you, I have friends that still all the time work with agents, and I hear about the cool jobs that they're getting. And sometimes I get jealous. It's a professional jealous. It's healthy. Obviously, I'm very happy for them and the cool gigs that they get. But sometimes I'm wondering, and I get cool gigs on my own that I'm sure they have a healthy jealousy about. So it is what it is, but for some people it works great. For some people, though, keep that in mind. Maybe working with an agent isn't right for you. It's a great way to break in, though, and it's a great way to get started in the industry. Another thing you want to be careful of, though, depending on the contract that you sign, you really need to read that contract with your agent, because sometimes they have it in their contract that any work that you do with a certain company, if you leave them for the next 5 years, they still get that percentage working with that company. They'll still take that percentage from you, even if you're not working from them or working with them anymore. So keep that in mind. There's all kinds of ways. Listen, everything's a business. Everything is trying to protect getting the most money that you can. So these are things to look out for, and also reasons why you might not want to work with an agent. I also know agents, for example, in publishing, where they will take a cut of every book you work on, even if you didn't get the job through them. If you're working on a book, they automatically take their percentage, which is like, if they didn't get you the job, why would they do that? That's what happens. That's how it works sometimes. So check out that contract and make sure. Everyone's in the business of making a dime. So even though they're fighting to get you the most money, you got to be careful. Sometimes you are taken advantage of. Think about it. All right, that's what's going on. Matt and James hanging out in Beverly Hills. Talk to you guys soon.